Hello, this is Dave Redder with part two of building database CRUD APIs. The purpose of this part two is to show you some of the changes I've made to what I left you with at the end of part one. And I'm going to show you using GitHub and, I'm going to show you using Git and the difference engine and all of that kind of thing. So, as we start, I'd like to remind you what we had, and there are a few things changed here. We have connected database, and this hasn't changed at all, except for the one piece down here at this end. But if you think about it, as you're looking through a piece of code that you've messed with, it's really hard to see what's there. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing all of this, I'm going to go to the history for this and go through and show you what it used to be and what it is now. So as we go, let me show you a few things without showing you the current file. And this is, I'm able to do this because I'm tracking this with Git. And that's a whole different story from what we're at. But right here you'll see that I had MySQL connect with 4 arguments. And currently I've taken this last argument right here out. The blue means that things have changed and that something's been modified. When you see green, that's going to mean something got added, and you see red, that means something got deleted. So for this, I just really took out the demo DB name, meaning the name of the database within this server under the username and password provided. And I did that so that we can specify it, and you'll see why that is here in a little bit. Let's take a look at some of these modifications now, how things have changed. And if you look here, I took this piece right here that was this line right here and these lines in this region right here, and instead of just having them sit there globally, I've converted them to a function. All right, and this function has no arguments. It simply connects and returns the connection object that it gets, and you can see that that's a new piece as well, or a modified piece with the MySQL. It really got rid of $con and changed it to MySQL. I've modified that name just because it made a little bit more sense. So as we go down through here, you'll see that I've done these same kinds of things in a number of different places. Let's ignore those guys for the moment. And let's look at this one right here, create table, which we looked at before, and we were able to create a table. And instead of just creating the same table every time, I've made a change to it so that I can tell it what the database name is and what the table name is for the table I want to create. So using this create table method, given a connection to the database, I will be able to create a new table in any database that the currently logged in user, the one that is specified by these values up in here with the database connection, this demo user and demo password, anybody or whatever databases that guy's able to do or that user's able to get to, you'll be able to add a table to that if the user has those credentials that allow table additions. Not much has changed here within the guts of it. If you'll look, well, in this case, yeah, not much has changed here in terms of what we did, except that what it's looking at is that now what it's looking at is different. But in any case, I've got the guts of it right here are all the same as the guts of it over here. And as a result, not much has changed in the way it works. The difference is that I've made it a function. The reason that I've made these things functions is because I didn't want to have to do all of this kind of stuff up here and just have it executed whether I wanted it to or not. And if you recall up here, I ended up, let me look at the, well, let me look here. I ended up taking this chunk of the comment and moving it down here if I didn't want to create a table. So this isn't very deep stuff here. I mean, this is just pointing out that instead of having just kind of a hacker's version of this, now we've got something that has Each of these pieces of functionality buried away in a function that we can call anytime we want. So let me go to the source code again, and I'd like to show you the pieces that we have now. We have a method here called connect to database, and its purpose is to connect to the database by using this user's name and password, and the database is on this, and we will then have access through $MySQLi will have access to everything that user has access to, including multiple databases, including the permissions to do certain kinds of things. So this makes it a lot more useful in a generic sense than it would be than it was before. All right, so let's go take a look at this. This one right here, this function, uses a different method than we looked at before. There's a statement called show databases, and all you have to do is just flat out provide it show databases for some connection, and whatever the user is able to do, whatever tables or whatever databases the user has any permissions at all on, will be shown in this list. So you can take a look at this code. I'm going to run it right now just by coming up here and simply saying show databases of MySQL. And in doing that, we end up with this. That looks like this. And you'll see why it looks like this in a minute. But we did the same thing as before. We got this connection successful message from the open database or connected database method. This thing right here is just a database, and this is the name of the user that I'm connected with, SSDB2guy. And this is one of the tables. And this isn't one of them that we created. This is one of them that's part of the infrastructure of SQL or of MySQL. And these are the tables within that. And we have the access to that, so there we get to see those. You'll notice that there aren't any other databases listed here. Well, that must mean that we don't have access. SSDB2guy doesn't have access to those. So if you'll hold on for a second, I'm going to go give this guy access so that we can see the difference between those two. So I'm going to pause this for a second, and I'll be right back. So I've returned, and what I did while I was gone was to go to MySQL Workbench and give access to this, which that's not part of this demo really, so I'm not going to throw that part in, to SSDB2guy, so you could also see that DB demo. And now you'll see that in this, we still have this information schema, but now we also have DB demo, and it's got some goofy tables in it that we'll throw out and start over again from scratch. But in any case, this show databases allows us to see all of the databases that this particular user has available. So let's get rid of that one. We can also see show tables. Show tables is a little bit different than show databases. Show databases simply uses a single argument that says show all the databases that this connection is allowed to see. On the other hand, show tables says I want to see all of the tables that are in this particular DB. In other words, we're going to look at the database demo. So let's do this. Instead of show databases, let's say show tables. But we're going to do it for that connection and this database. And so that's going to allow us just to see the tables that exist in DB demo. And so let me do that, and I'll save that. And we will run that again. And this time you'll see that we have just this little piece that you saw at the bottom of that other page a few moments ago. So we now have the ability to get some information and display it, or do other things with it actually, that that allow us to look at the structure of the database management system in terms of the databases it's managing that are available to the logged in user, and to show the structure of each of the databases, at least in terms of the tables. And there are other things we could find out as well. If I were to want to create a table, I could do it like this. I could say, let's do it just right here. Create table, MySQL I, and then what I want to do, as you can see in this structure, is to name the database DB demo, and then I'm going to create a table named table whatever name I give it. And this function still has a lot to be desired, because it's going to create, every time it creates a table, it's going to create it with this kind of a structure. But for this, I don't really care right now. So if I were to run this again, when I do this, it did the create table as we saw before, and then it asked for, as you can remember here, asked for the tables in DB demo, and there they are, and there's the new one right there. That one wasn't there before. And as a result, we now have the ability to programmatically create tables, examine the structure of it, or at least the content of a database, examine the content of the database collection, and so on. So the purpose of this is to encapsulate various pieces of functionality. And in fact, we can do this describe. If you take a look at this, describe uses the same arguments as create table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, copy it, and paste it, and change this to describe table. And so now you can see that we're not, I probably should just get rid of create that table, but I'm going to describe the table, and then we'll show, I don't even need show tables for this one, we'll just get rid of that. And so the idea is that I'm going to do this, and I'm simply going to create the connection and then describe the table, and we'll save that. We'll come over here and see what happens. And now you see that I have a description of the table called test. And the table called test has an ID and first and last. Those are the fields in it. And those fields are, this one is a primary key, and I think this means, yeah, this means that it's not allowed to be null. These two are allowed to be null. So let's bring Workbench back over here, and let's look at the, let's bring this over here. We're going to bring this down here and look at, let me look at this one. We're going to look at this, I better do this. Huh. Oh, I know why that is. Let me hold on. I've changed the name because I messed something up. Okay, so you can see that I have these tables here, and we have the ability to, oh, hold on a minute. Okay, what was messing me up is that this says test right there, description of test, and you can see right here that that's hard-coded, but in fact it shouldn't be that way, because what we really have is the table name here rather than doing everything for test. So I'm going to put $table name there in quotes, or not in quotes, but I'll end this quote here and tack that onto the end of that, and then I'll end this one, or start that one there. So let me start this over again, and watch as we reload this page. It'll say the right name of the table there. So there's my new table. That's the one that I asked for. Right here, it was passed into this argument, and that's the one that it's giving me the information about. So the information I've got is this information that I asked for, and you can see it right there. Okay, so what's the big deal here? Why is that such an important thing to be able to do? And I've got other methods here as well. I've got describe table, I've got update table, I've got delete table, and we'll come and look at those later, but they're very simple. What's the big deal? Well, I'll tell you what the big deal is. My next video that I'm going to provide, part 3 of this, is going to be to build a PDF file. I'm sorry, not a PDF, a PHP file, a web page that has some controls on it that will allow me to do a click and then make a call to these methods that are here and have those things done as the result of a click. The reason I have show databases here and the reason I have show tables here is because what I want to be able to do is to allow the user to pick the database that needs to be modified, and then allow the user to pick which table is going to be the target of something, and then call create table with just a button, maybe a text box where you'll type in the name of the table and you click text or click create table and it will create the table. That's the goal for right now, but it's to show you the beauty of having an API that sits out here just waiting to do services, to perform services for somebody. And that's the job that the API has, and that's what we're going to build. So with that, we're at about 17 minutes right here. I'm going to shut this down, and we will continue in part 3 later. Have a good day. Bye.